Good afternoon, Francis. The meeting will begin in 5 minutes. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Respected Director Brother Anthony Weiland, Deputy Director Brother Peter, Principal Dr. R.N. Subbarao, faculties, and all my dear fellow Franciscans. A budget is more than just a series of numbers. It is an embodiment of our values. Today, we have connected together to have an introduction on the budget. I now request our Principal, Dr. R.N. Subbarao, to welcome the gathering.
Good afternoon. Am I audible? Okay. Okay. I would like to thank the organizers of a 5-day virtual program on budget, its process, its impacts, and implications. In fact, the Department of Commerce is doing a very good job at the right time to enable all the participants to understand better on a very important issue pertaining not only to the country, even outside country, because all of you know that the budget implications, the budget recommendation will not applicable only to the individuals. It is applicable to many in different ways and means. On 1st February, our finance minister, who would be presenting the budget, a very important document. So in connection with the budget that would be presented on 1st February, the Department of Commerce has been conducting or is conducting sessions prior to presentation of the budget and after the presentation of the budget. So this 5-day program is divided into 3 aspects. One is pre-budget presentation. Second, the day of presentation of the budget. And the most important one is post-budget presentation. So study of the budget will have to be done in different ways and different means to enable you to understand anything and everything regarding budget. This particular program is arranged and organized. I would like to convey my regards to Head of the Department, Mr. Jasmine Raj, who has taken the initiative in organizing this 5-day program. And I also appreciate and encourage all the faculty in the Department of Commerce who have joined their hands in making this program a really meaningful one. I should also compliment and congratulate all my students. They are not attending this program out of compulsion. No. All of them, whoever is attending, they are attending to enhance their knowledge base and to understand much more about the budget and its implications. So I should congratulate all the students and any other participants other than this to this 5-day program. And all of you and all of us know that a budget is an estimate of income and expenditure pertaining to a specific period. And this is being prepared by the budget division of Department of Economic Affairs of Ministry of Finance, headed by the Finance Minister, Madam Nirmala Sitharaman. And budget, all of you know that it has two parts. One side, the revenue that would be generated could be in the form of income tax, excise duty, maybe corporate tax, customs, borrowings, and other sources through which the government gets its income. But this income, what is being generated or estimated to be generated, is meant for spending. And it could be spent on different divisions and departments. It could be towards communication, chemicals and fertilizers, agriculture, railways, research and development, home affairs. Select that very big list of allocation of this finance has to be done. So how the rupee comes in and how the rupee is spent, all these will be made known to everybody in the form of budget preparation. So let us try to know more about the issue budget and all the information regarding the revenue generation and likely expenditure. So once again, thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to share my small information. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Before starting the today's program, I would like to give what is the importance of budget. Budget helps us to keep an eye on the price. It helps us for proper resourceful allocation. It ensures economic growth and it administers the operation of PSUs. Today, we have our speaker, Dr. Balaji M., Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce. He has completed his MCom and PhD from Central College, Bengaluru University. He is NET and KSET qualified. He is specialized in accounting and taxation. His area of interest is finance. He has 7 years of teaching experience. He has published various research papers and attended various national level conferences. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Zoya. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah. So, a warm welcome to all. So today we'll be having an introduction to budget, and this is going to be a quite general in nature, so you can know from where we have sourced out this budget and how does that influence or which sector is going to have an implication of this budget. So here first, let us start with economy. So economy here, uh, maybe there are different types of definition which has been provided for the economy is concerned. See, in general, economy means a country. How do you run a country with the production and the consumption and the fixation of prices concerned? And that is where we have this economy. Economic is an coexistence of many institutions and other aspects, other related aspects. So here we are trying to see that who runs this economy. So of course, yes, the government. So government is the one which runs the economy and sees to that the goals of the economic systems have been achieved. And here we are, I mentioned about the economic system. So India follows a mixed type of economic system, which is of not an efficient one and not a permanent one. Either you'll have to stick on to capitalistic or you're socialistic, but you can't run in the middle. So it is highly dangerous to have a balanced one. You can't run in a balanced one quite a longer period. It's just for a short term. But anyway, the government moves nowadays seems to that they are moving towards capitalistic economy. But even then, now the government has certain key roles which to be discussed. The key roles of the government is they must provide a well functioning legal and political system. See, whenever the country has an unstable political system, and it will lead to a greater amount of chaos where nobody can decide on several aspects. So in that case, any economy facing a political or economic turmoil is not conducive to economic growth, since it will have very little trust in the economy. Moreover, there is an uncertainty in the economy and people will not be willing to invest. That will in turn will lead to less amount of capital formation, which is highly dangerous for the economy to move towards the development. The government need to make sure that there is a stable political environment. So it is very important on part of the government to provide a good legal and political framework, so upon which everybody can build upon. Okay. Next, the government takes over our economy, it has to lay the regulatory role to provide a competitive market. There should be a certain regulation. See, without regulation, nothing can happen in this country. So we have taken it everything for granted. There is no regulation. Whenever there is a regulation, there comes a resistance. So in our system of economy, we are going beyond the rules and regulations. Until or unless rules and regulations are framed, nobody works to the exact objective, and that is the disadvantage of having a mixed economy. But anyway, here the regulatory works or regulations is very much necessary so that we can avoid the monopolistic situation that could arise in future, so which has already been happening in capitalistic and economy, so that we can try to curb it, so we can avoid your monopolistic situation. So government has to think over the trade policies with foreign countries, regulations on natural resources available in our country. And then the government's role is to stimulate the economy by increasing the government spending. So government spending is not the politician spending; it's the spending for the by the government for the development of the country. So here, we need to see through that the government is spending towards the infrastructures, as well as we have revenue and capital expenditures that will be dealt later under fiscal policy. So this is the wide role of the government, which is very vital for the country to proceed towards the development, or to proceed towards the achievement of the goals of the economic system. Yeah, these are the main three roles. Then how do we start with? So these roles have been connected with the economic policies. As I said, there are more number of regulations in our country, and there are more number of people who violate the regulations as well. But we do have more number of economic policies for the development of our economy. So out of this, the majors have been listed out. The first thing we have is industrial policy, which is trying to regulate or which is trying to look into the industries such, and then trade policy, and the monetary, fiscal, national agricultural policy, international trade policy in India, EXIM, and exchange management. So we'll go one by one. So industrial policy. So to develop the industries, we need, of course, a policies was very much in need. So they could concentrate on secondary sector. Even now we have our primary sector as agriculture, but no way we are highly dependent on agriculture. But of course, yes, we are somewhat related to agriculture, and it is not dominating our economy anymore. So we need to concentrate on the secondary and tertiary. So to move on, we need to have a tertiary sector very strengthened. But anyway, we had an industrial policy. uh, they thought that it is very much necessary, and they started this industrial policies in 1948 to have it. The new policies relating to your industry suggest that there is an expansion of responsibilities. And then, of course, there was a threat for of nationalization and other things. So when you look at this, it will be giving you a clear cut picture. So we had more number of policies, more number of regulations, and then they totally cut it down in 1991 because there were very less number of production and productivity. And that is where we came out with your neo-economic policy. So 1948, we started to stress on public sector. So India did not open its door for foreign people till 1991. And then in 1973, we started to handle your FERA. Under FERA, RBI takes care of your Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, but later on it was shifted as FEMA, and now we have FEMA, not FERA. FERA has already taken over. And 1951, the policy is handled by the Development and Regulations. And 1991, this is the where the we call it as a new economic policy, where the India had to come over its economic crisis, and that's where they were forced to go for this new economic policies by WTO and other international agencies. This is connected with your industrial policy, and then when we have a trade policy. So foreign trade policy of India focuses on trying to see though that we enhance our share of trade in the world. So we had a considerable let's say contribution towards the world GDP before independence. But after, that is not before independence. It was before we came under the British rule. Before that, we had a good amount of considerable contribution towards the world GDP. It was estimated that we were giving them around 10 to 12% of the overall world GDP, that India was contributing alone 10 to 12%. But of course, now we are trying to struggle between 2 to 3 or 4%. And that is where here the trade policy is trying to increase the level of trade activities that is concerning with India with other countries. And then we have a national agricultural policy. So whatever they do, they ultimately want to end up with good vote banks. They normally concentrate on rural areas because most of the people are from rural areas and rural backgrounds. They were very much interested to capture them. So that's where they brought in this policy of national agricultural policy, where it could regulate on the land reforms, and then trying to have your MSPs and policies so that they can take over the loan waivers. So all these things that come just to eyewash. But anyway, they are concentrating on agriculture. So this national agricultural policy is trying to give more importance towards the agricultural sector, uh, since it was a primary sector, and it is now even. And then international trade policy. This is getting connected with our international trade relationships. So this policy includes free trade in India. And of course, here is where we categorize most favored nations, and not favorable nations. So that's where we categorize them and go for reducing the tariffs and giving the free kind of a trade facilities that can happen between the countries. And here we suggest, let's say this policy will help us to move towards the greater amount of smooth trade dealings that happen between the countries. And then we go with the exchange rate management policy. So this was mainly towards looking after our exchange rates and see through that how can we regain our stability in terms of foreign trade and the capital movement is concerned. And then EXIM policy, the export import policy, which was again in the gift from 1991. And the government of, let's say, the Indian government tried to have these structural changes with the EXIM is concerned. So where we first time opened our doors to the foreign players to invest in our country and go ahead with their business dealings is concerned. And next we have our monetary policy. So monetary policy, yes, of course, which is controlling the monetary aspects of our country or the economy. Here, this monetary is completely taken over by the autonomous institution called RBI. So that is in turn a central bank of India. So that takes care of all these aspects of money and money related aspects within the country. And FEMA, as I said, FERA is being replaced with FEMA, where just a word that regulation is being changed with the management. We try to manage it, so that comes under this RBI. So they take care of regulating your interest rates and look after the money supply that happens within the country. And then fiscal policy is a very important policy. So fiscal policy is something which is connected and closely related, and of course, it is something. It is the main crux of this session. So this policy is controlling your taxation and decision and deciding whether how much should be the expenditure of the government based upon its income. And the government takes a strong step to strengthen the control of expenditure of this country, and that happens through your fiscal policy. Now, after all this, how can the policymaker influence the economy? What are the ways through which they can influence our economy? There are, out of these many listed policies, there are two policies which play a major role. These are the two which can influence to your economy or any economy to the core. So one, it is monetary, and other one, it is fiscal. So monetary, as we have already stated it, it is something which is regulated by the central bank, which in turn takes over your interest rate, bank reserve rates, sale and purchase of the government securities, and issue of treasury bills and other things. This takes care of your monetary aspects is concerned. And fiscal policy, so this is where you can influence your economy. You can move towards the development, or you can stay back, or you do nothing. And this is where we have the fiscal policy. The healthy fiscal policy is very important, so that it will help you to maintain or to control the inflation. High amount of inflation is also dangerous. High amount of deflation is also dangerous. We need to balance between these both. And employment opportunity, how do we create employment opportunity? By providing good amount of funds. So how do we get these funds? It is your fiscal policy which tells you the sources of funds and how do you spend it. And the very important thing is, they manage the entire economy. This is part of the central government, whereas monetary is from the part of your RBI, which is autonomous in sense. That means they take their own decisions. They don't depend upon the government. So here, when we look into that, we have the sources of income. So fiscal policy, the sources of income are categorized in this way. So they can be categorized in maybe taxation and non-taxation revenue. So taxation in revenues are those revenues which are earned from taxes. So maybe an income tax, corporate tax or corporation tax, indirect taxes. These are the tax connected revenue sources. And next, non-tax connected revenue sources are income from railways, absolutely a dream work, because we have never got any kind of a profit out of railways except during one regime. Apart from that, since its inspection, we have been earning a very little amount or loss towards your railways is concerned, whereas your private sector banks, interest from the bonds, and many other aspects which are not connected with the taxes are the sources of income. Next, when you look into your expenditure, these are the two major expenditure which has been happening out of your fiscal policy. The first one is a revenue expenditure. All of my commerce students know what is revenue expenditure. So revenue expenditure are the expenditure which is normally happening without any, let's say, there is no asset creation, whereas asset is created only in terms of capital expenditure. So your revenue expenditure includes payment of your government employee salaries, and payment to your ministers, and payment towards your, what are all the perks they enjoy out of tax money. Of course, that is the revenue expenditure which happens in a normal due course on a regular durations. And next, capital expenditure. This capital expenditure, the expenditure connected with your capital assets is concerned, where they try to create a formation of your assets in the economy, like building, let's say, they go for constructing the bridges, overhead roads, or schools. All these things are connected with your capital expenditure. And yeah, so two variables that can influence your fiscal policy is taxation, so that the government can enjoy, or the government can increase its revenue, and then government spending. These two are the main variables which can influence your fiscal policy, since fiscal policy is nothing but controlling or knowing your income and expenditure of the government. And here we start with your budget. Now, what is budget? This is a background. See, where the budget is from is through your economic policies. Under economic policies, fiscal policy. Under fiscal policy, we have an option of your budget. So, budget is an annual statement. It is just an estimate. It is not the right and accurate information or figures which they project is right. So, that is an estimate. Budget is not going to have any kind of rigidity. It is a kind of flexible in nature, where you can change at any point of time with the right intention. So in that case, it flexibility of your budget is, it's just an estimate. This estimate is being done by your government, especially with your union government is concerned. So annual financial statement of the government, which gives the roadmap for one complete year. So this happens once in 12 months. So of course, every February 1st we have this. Before, prior to February, we had this in the end of February. It was started at 5 p.m., which is equivalent to the afternoon session of your British, and later on they try to change the timings, and now it is happening at 11. So that's where they shifted the timings of your budget sessions as well. Maybe if you are interested, you can just look in, you can have a live stream of this budget session that will happen a day after tomorrow. So before proceeding with the budget, let us see what is the what are the types of budget. So there are of course types of budget. The first type is a surplus budget. Surplus budget is where we have a surplus of revenue. That means you have very less amount of expenses but a good amount of income. There is no such country which has greater amount of income and less amount of expenditure. Either it will go for balanced or it will go for deficit. Of course, there are options when it is deficit. What the government can do. So the surplus budget is a dream come true for all the economies. If in case they have a surplus budget, that will be the greatest achievement which has been done by the government. So in this case, if you look at the next aspect of your type of budget is balanced one. So balanced one is quite balanced in terms of your um, expenditure and income is concerned. So where your income is equal to expenses. So there is no increase or decrease. So it has remained balanced. So that is where we have your balanced budget. And next we have a deficit budget. Deficit budget, our India has been providing the deficit budget for a quite long time. So deficit in the sense where the revenues are less and the expenses are more. And that is where the situation we call it as a deficit budget. So here, what to do if there is a deficit budget? See, there is no problem if you have a surplus, if it is a balanced. But there is a problem if there is a deficit budget. If there is a deficit budget and you are not concentrating upon how to cope up with that, then you will end up with the Sri Lankan economic crisis. What they did is, let me explain with the next slide. So here, what does your deficit budget do? It indicates the financial health of your economy, whether you have a sufficient money so that you can manage the entire things happening around the economy or not. Okay, and then if the if you have any deficit, or let's say if you have any kind of imbalance that's happening between the revenue and capital account, they try to fill in this gap by borrowing or issuing, let's say by borrowing, which happens usually by issuing the bonds. Maybe we had this situation when we try to control the petroleum prices. Let's say petrol prices, even though the crude oil prices increased, we try to control it, or we try to keep it within the price range of India is concerned, by issuing more number of petroleum bonds. And that's where we are paying heavy money for the interest towards those bonds, and that's why we are unable to control the increase in the prices of your petrols. Anyway, that's a different aspect. But when it comes to Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka started issuing more number of bonds and got these bonds, the revenue generated through or borrowings through this, they started utilizing for the economic development. They were less amount of a dependency on your internal bonds, and later on they fetched in for foreign bonds. And then of course the more number of the borrowings increased than the revenue generation, and that's where they end up in your economic crisis. And India is also having this system of borrowing by issuing bonds. Any bond which has been issued in Indian currency abroad, we term it as in masala bonds. The first bond was being issued in UK in Indian currency, and that was in turn with the railway bonds was concerned in 2014-15. Okay, so how does this government spending is going to impact? Sir, why should we know about this budget and what is the impact of it? See, budget is very very important to know how your government is earning a single pie and how it is spending. Whether its earning is less than its spending, or you need to know, no, otherwise there will be increase in taxation also. And again we'll have that aspect again. See, the sources we have already discussed, and the expenditure is also been done. So here, how is that going to impact? So it will be impacting in this way. If there is an high budget deficit, then you will have to inevitably increase the tax rates in order to collect the good amount of revenue from the public, and the interest rate will go high, and there will be a high amount of inflation, more demand and less supply, and more amount of money circulation can also happen. But of course, if the prices increases, it will not be a great choice for you to go for it. So government spending in situations spare capacity and may cause bigger final increase in GDP, let's say, in the initial injection. So however, if the economy is at full capacity, the increase in government spending would tend to crowd out the private sector, so which will the no to net increase in the GDP. So of course, it will also have an effect on GDP, gross domestic product, so which is equal to your production which is happening within the country. Then when it comes to our Indian budget, so Indian budget, we call it as in Republic of India. It's also known as Union budget. It has been in our constitution, in Article 112, which says it is an annual financial statement. Budget is an annual financial statement proposed by the government, that is union government, to ensure that it is implemented the start of new fiscal year. So fiscal year we start from 1st April and ends up at 31st March. Before that, 1 month prior, this new budget will be proposed, and that will be in effect after 1st April. Then under budgetary classification, the government spends, as we know that the government spends in two um, major things. One, it is revenue expenditure, and other one, it is your capital expenditure. And this comes the categorization or classifications of the government expenditures. The first thing is the general or regulatory services like revenue, defense, police, and administration, etc. So they look into this. And next one is social and community services. Maybe they can give more importance for education, health, housing, etc. And then economic services such as foreign trade, industry, transport, agriculture, and related sectors. They can concentrate upon that. And what are the major institutions in budgetary process? So who are involved? The first thing is Parliament. Parliament in India is the supreme legislative body involved in your budgetary process. Parliamentary approval for the passage of budget is must. Okay, so under Article 112 of the Constitution, the President shall cause to be laid before both the houses of Parliament the annual financial statement. This annual financial statement is a main budget document, and maybe to be noted that the lower house or Lok Sabha holds the absolute control over the financial matters, including the union budget. Union budget is proposed in the lower house, and all the money related things are connected only with the lower house. Maybe the decision making body is something else, but of course the majority is from your Lok Sabha or the lower house. Next comes your political executives. Political executives have an equal role to play in budgetary process. Here, our political executive is the Union Finance Minister, who pilots the budget in the Parliament. The Ministry of Finance is the core unit of executive, who has been entrusted with the task of managing the operational dynamics of the budget. The Ministry of Finance is a nodal agency of the budgetary process, right from estimating the final figures of the revenues and expenditures of the government for the presentation before the Parliament. So the ministry is vested with the task so that it can ensure that the finance of the country is well managed with the proper care. And next we have an audit department, another important institution which is involved in the budgetary process again, which takes care of every pie which has been spent. Okay, they are visualizing the provisions of Article 148 of the Constitution, the Office of CAG conducts an audit on behalf of the Parliament to investigate and report on the fidelity, legality, and efficiency of all the financial transactions which are being carried out by the government departments. Over the past few years, if you can observe, the CAG has emerged as one of the most stringent checks. Let's say they have um, made more number of raids, or let's say checks on the financial improper, let's say the frauds which are happening within the internal government departments have been thoroughly checked upon. And through critics, they have been urged against such a role of audit in our country. Of course, they are doing their duty, but we have people to criticize rather than to appreciate. And parliamentary committees, finally, they are the committee uh, on estimates, people accounts, and public undertaking, as well as apart from this parliamentary committee, there are 24 departmental standing committees play an important role in the budget processes. Important roles are assigned to these committees to exercise control over finance of the government or its public undertakings. These are the major institutions which goes for preparing the budget, or they are involved in the budget is concerned in our country. And then how is the budget prepared? We need to know how is budget prepared. Who prepares, let's say, food at home, mom or anybody else. But of course, you should know the person who does it. It will not be possible if you go for Zomato and Swiggy. But here everything is possible in India, since everything is crystal clear. The first thing is the annual budget. Let's say the budget is a statement which is being prepared by the consultation of Niti Ayog, which has come up in the replacement of your 5 yearly plans. So we don't have a 5 yearly plan. We have already started with that is National Planning Commission. Instead, we have a Niti Ayog, which has been replaced, and the concerned ministries. And here, if we can look into the budget division of the Department of Economic Affairs, is a nodal body responsible for producing the budget, and budget making starts in the month of August to September. This is about 6 months prior. They don't begin just a week early, they start 6 months early. And it needs to be passed in both the houses so that it can start a smooth beginning from April 1st. And this is the process, budget preparation process. Issuance of circulars to all the ministries. A circular is issued to all the ministries, states, and union territories by the finance ministry, asking or requesting them to prepare an estimates for the coming year. The circular will have a skeleton form along with the requisite guidelines based on which the ministers represent their requirements or estimates, and it has been sent back. Okay, and this will be based on the previous revenue and expenditure that has happened in the last year. And next, consultation on proposal received. Here is where, after requests are being received, they don't just blindly consider, they will consult the top officials. You have something called as somebody who has been in charge of this, IAS, IRS, and people like this who are connected. So those who are connected will go through the proposals which are made. Don't think that all the proposals which are made will be accepted. So they will have the consultation whether it is required, and let's say it is very important or not. So that consultations are undertaken between the ministries and the Department of Expenditure. Upon the approval, the data will be sent to Finance Ministry, and that is the second step. First, you call for an request, or you request for an estimates, and next, after consulting, it will go for an allocation. Under allocation of revenues, the Finance Ministry, after going through all the recommendation, allocates the revenues to various departments upon their future estimated requirements. In case there is any dispute over allocation of funds, of course, we are known for disputes. There will be a disputes. If in case there is no dispute, there is a dispute, the Finance Ministry again will consult the Union Cabinet or the Prime Minister, and after which the final decisions will be taken upon. Okay, in the allocation of funds, other stakeholders like farmer, small business owners, foreign institutions, investors are also consulted by your DEA. DEA refers to Department of Economic Affairs. After their consultations only, we go with your further step called pre-budget meeting. In the pre-budget meeting, the it is all been concerned with your finance ministry, and finance minister takes up the responsibility on her or his shoulder. So here, pre-budget meetings with various stakeholders to know about their proposals and demand. These stakeholders include maybe the state representatives, bankers, agriculturists, or at times we call the trade unions also, so that they are also part and parcel, and economists. Once the pre-budget consultations are done, the final call will be taken by the finance minister upon the demand. It has also been discussed with the prime minister. So prime minister, since he heads the cabinet, union cabinet, without his approval, nothing can proceed. So his approval is must for pre-budget meeting to finalize upon. And next, budget printing happens. So here the interesting part is budget printing was happening inside the Rashtrapati Bhavan, or let's say the area where the president resides. At some point of time, it was leaked. The information of your budget was leaked even before the budget was proposed in the parliament. And from there onwards, they started to lock all the finance ministry officials, and they will work there till the budget is proposed. They are not allowed to even to talk to their family or friends or kith and kins until or unless this is being prepared. So they have some halwa party. So we call it as a ritual. Halwa is prepared in big kadai. So there they start to mark the start of your budget session printing. So till that is printed and been presented, they will never go out. The officials who are working on it will never go out, and that happens in your budget printing. So leakage of information is quite normal in developing countries. In India as well, India is no more different from other countries. Everywhere there is a leakage of information. So wherever there is a secrecy, a confidentiality to be maintained, they always tell the same thing to others and follow the same by publishing them without concern from others. So, however, budget printing has stopped now, and they have reduced the cost of printing. Since then, the documents will not be printed after your COVID-19. Instead, they are being circulated to the MPs. Now, the MPs have new demand. They want tabs so that they can go through that. Of course, they have been sent with the electronical one. And next is the presentation of budget. See, budget printing happens after pre-budget meeting, and then it goes for printing, and after printing, it goes for the presentation. So presentation, who will present? It will be presented by the finance minister in Lok Sabha. So, however, it was presented in last day of February until 2016, and from 2017 onwards, the budget was started to be present in February 1st of every year. And later on, there were several changes which were been happening in terms of presentations also. I will go through, I'll give you an interesting facts that happens during the budget sessions. Hope this budget preparation process is clear. Now we head on with the next aspect of stages in budgetary process in the parliament. First, it will be presented in the legislature. So legislature, normally the finance minister presents the budget in the Lok Sabha, usually on the first working day of February. Let's say here they will give an indication of tax proposals and economic and financial policy of the government. The budget is also placed before the upper house, though its financial power is extremely limited. Financial power lays only with the lower house. It's not having any connection with the upper house. Any finance related aspects only from the lower house, because they are being elected from the people directly. The next one is your general decisions. It takes place after few days of the presentation of your budget. It is spread over 2 or 3 days. The discussion in each house is confined to general principles or policy underlying the budget. No details are discussed. There is no voting nor even a cut motion allowed. The general discussion is serving the purpose of enabling an overview of the programs of the government, particularly the charged expenditure. At the end of the debate, the minister replies, reacting to the points raised by the members, upon which they will go for voting of demand for grants. After the general discussion, the lower house takes up voting of demands. This voting of expenditure is part of the budget and is the exclusive privilege of the lower house. Here, only the presentation is going to happen in both the houses, where the others, maybe the last one, voting of demands, is happening only in terms of your lower house. It is a privilege that has been given for the lower house. And then who implements and how it has been implemented. So as we have discussed, the budget has been prepared. Now it has to go for implementation. Now who implements it? So it is the whole and sole responsibility of the finance minister. Since they have proposed it, they will go for announcing and implementing it as well. So implementation starts from 1st April. The nodal agency issues an advisory of how much to spend to the ministries, so that they will not be allowed to spend more than the allocated. So if there is more than the allocated, then they have must take the prior permissions or sanctions from the respective authorities. At the same time, it is also mandatory for each spending department to maintain the payment and receipts. Of course, we do that for each and every transaction. We must maintain an receipts, or let's say the documents which to be produced for CAG for the audit purpose. And then the first budget in India was proposed in 1860 by East India Company to the British Crown. And this was at 5 p.m. And now we start at 11 a.m. So Mr. Wilson was the finance member of Indian Council, so who has advised the Indian Viceroy. And this was the person, Mr. Mr. Wilson. He was the Scottish businessman. He is an economist and a liberal politician. He founded the Economist and the Standard Chartered Bank, which is doing well in all the countries around the globe. Then the longest business speech was done by your current finance minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, which she had taken 2 hours 42 minutes to deliver a budget speech. And of course, she left 2 papers unread since she was unable to proceed with. There was a due to her illness. If she had continued, then it would have been more or less 3 hours. And most number of words used in budget speech is 18,650 words by our the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, who was also the finance minister in 1991. He was the instrumental to start with this new economic policies as well under the leadership of Narasimha Rao. And next, we have a shortest budget speech, which was hardly about 800 words by our Hero M. Patel, which was delivered in 1977. And now we don't have a separate budget for railway. Previously, we used to have 2 budgets. One was a union budget, the other was a railway budget. And 2017 onwards, we had to break this custom or tradition of having 2 different budgets. So that was merged, and the finance minister itself will try to propose your railway budget as well as a part of the budget session. And this year, we'll have a union budget of 2023-24. It will be proposed in the parliament, and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will propose it on 1st Feb 2023 at 11 a.m., which will be launched by the central government again. And that's where we wind up the session for the day. And I hand over to Zoya.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your knowledge. Some of the key highlights of your presentation was types of budget, classification of government activities, preparation process, stages in the budget preparation, the different types of budget. Thank you, sir. It was really an great presentation, and a lot of knowledge is being shared. Thank you so much, sir. As we have come to end of the session, I extend my sincere gratitude to everyone watching me. Now, in the chat box, there will be a link posted, Google Form link. Everyone use that link, fill that form. That is for attendance. That link will be active only for 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, there will not be responses. Okay, please. The link is put up in the chat box. Yes, the link is put in the chat box. Please use the link for your attendance. This link is active only for 3 minutes. Thank you, everyone.